The silence in my grandfather's attic was a heavy, suffocating thing, punctuated only by the scritch of mice in the walls and the frantic hammering of my own heart. I'd expected dust, cobwebs, and forgotten memories. I found something else entirely, something that smelled faintly of old paper, fear, and a metallic tang that made the hairs on my arms stand up. My grandfather, Arthur, had been a quiet man, a history professor, retired, unassuming. He'd passed away peacefully in his sleep a few weeks ago, leaving behind a lifetime of meticulously organized books, a surprisingly pristine garden, and an attic that was anything but. My task, as the only grandchild still living in the area, was to sort through it all. A sentimental journey, I told myself. A chance to connect with the man I'd only ever known as a gentle soul who loved crossword puzzles and Earl Grey tea. The attic was a labyrinth of forgotten furniture draped in white sheets, boxes overflowing with yellowed photographs, and stacks of academic journals that smelled of stale parchment. Hours bled into one another as I sifted through relics of a life I barely knew. Then, in a far corner, tucked away behind a towering stack of encyclopedias, I spotted it. A heavy, dark oak chest. It wasn't like the other pieces up here, which were mostly family heirlooms or cheap storage units. This chest was solid, ornate, and seemed to hum with a silent, forgotten energy. I knelt, brushing away layers of grime and dust. The wood was cold beneath my fingertips, smooth yet scarred by time. The lock was rusted shut, but the lid surprisingly wasn't latched. With a grunt, I managed to lift it. Inside, beneath layers of moth-eaten blankets and what looked like a collection of my grandmother's old knitting supplies, was a false bottom. My breath hitched. My grandfather, Arthur, had been many things, but secretive wasn't one of them. Or so I'd always believed. This wasn't just a hidden compartment. It was meticulously crafted, almost seamlessly integrated into the chest's design. It took a good 5 minutes of fumbling, my fingers tracing the edges, before I found the tiny, almost invisible latch. It clicked with a soft, almost apologetic whisper. Beneath the false bottom there were only 2 items. A small leather-bound diary, its cover worn smooth from handling, and a single faded photograph tucked beneath it. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the diary first. It was heavier than it looked, its pages thick and numerous. There was no title, no name etched into the leather, just the raw material of a book meant to hold secrets. I flipped it open, the brittle paper crackling in the oppressive silence. The first page was blank, but the second held an inscription, written in precise, almost clinical handwriting. For the eyes of Sparrow only. Should this fall into the wrong hands, assume compromise. Sparrow. Compromise. My mind immediately jumped to spy novels, to Cold War thrillers I'd devoured as a teenager. But this wasn't fiction. This was my grandfather's attic. I thumbed through the initial pages. Dates spanned from the late 1960s to the early 1970s. The entries weren't personal musings or daily anecdotes. They were terse, coded, filled with acronyms and names I didn't recognize. Operation Nightingale, Project Chimera, Asset Extraction from Sector 7. It was like reading a foreign language, yet the underlying tension was palpable, even without understanding the specifics. Then I found an entry that stopped me cold. November 12, 1968. The handwriting was tighter here, almost frantic. Rendezvous compromised. Sparrow is gone. The package secure, but the cost too high. They know. I saw her face in the crowd, the one from the dossier. She's closer than we thought. Must move the asset. I read it again slowly, letting the words sink in. Sparrow is gone. That phrase echoed in the quiet attic, conjuring images of disappearance, of loss, of something far more sinister than a simple retirement. They know. Who were they? And her face in the crowd, the one from the dossier. This wasn't some abstract historical account. This was a personal, immediate threat, written from the perspective of someone living on the edge. My gaze drifted to the photograph, which I'd almost forgotten. It was a black and white print, slightly creased, showing a group of 5 people standing in front of a nondescript building. They were dressed in trench coats and fedoras, faces grim, eyes shadowed. Old-school spies straight out of a movie. But one face was different. My eyes locked onto the man standing slightly apart from the others, his collar turned up, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He was younger, sharper, with an intensity in his gaze that was almost unsettling. His eyes, even in the faded print, seemed to pierce through the decades and look directly at me. It was my grandfather, Arthur. Not the gentle retired professor I knew, but a younger, harder version, one I couldn't reconcile with the man who taught me how to fish and patiently explained the intricacies of ancient Roman history. His face, etched with a grim determination, was unmistakable. He was one of them, one of the spies. A chill that had nothing to do with the attic's draft snaked its way up my spine. My grandfather, a Cold War spy? It was an absurd, impossible thought. He'd never mentioned it, not a single word. His life had been an open book, or so I'd believed. Yet here was the undeniable evidence, staring back at me from the brittle pages of a secret diary and a decades-old photograph. I flipped back to the diary, searching for any mention of his name, Arthur. There was none. Only code names. Phoenix, Shadow, Courier. Was Arthur one of these? Was he Sparrow, the one who was gone? The thought sent a jolt of genuine fear through me. If he was Sparrow and Sparrow was gone, what did that mean? My eyes scanned the entries again, this time with a new terrifying lens. Every cryptic phrase, every coded message, now hummed with a different kind of danger. This wasn't just my grandfather's secret past. It felt like a live wire, still buzzing with untold energy. December 1st, 1968. Source confirmed. The operation is compromised from within. Watcher is a double. Must retrieve the package before it falls into agency hands. Trust no one. Watcher is a double. The words were a hammer blow. My grandfather, a kind, unassuming man, had been involved in a world of betrayal, of double agents, of life or death stakes. The sheer weight of that realization pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I looked at the photograph again, at the young Arthur, his face a mask of grim resolve. What had he done? What secrets had he kept buried for so long? And why? The next entry was even more unsettling, dated just a few days after the Watcher revelation. December 5th, 1968. The package is secure, but I am exposed. Orders received, go dark. Assume new identity. Erase all traces. They are closing in. If this diary is ever found, know that the truth is buried deeper than anyone can imagine, and that some secrets, once unearthed, carry a cost far greater than death. Go dark. New identity. Erase all traces. My grandfather, Arthur, had lived his entire life under a false identity. The man I knew, the man who had raised my father, the man who was my grandfather, was a ghost, a cover. The implications were staggering, terrifying. He hadn't just been a spy. He had become someone else to escape that life. But what did that mean for me, now that I had unearthed his secret? The diary explicitly stated that if it was found, assume compromise. My hands were sweating, the leather of the diary feeling slick beneath my fingers. I was no longer just a grandson cleaning out an attic. I was an accidental archaeologist of a dangerous past, and I was holding something that felt incredibly, terrifyingly vital. A sudden sharp creak from the floorboards below made me jump. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, overwhelming silence. I froze, every nerve ending screaming. Had I heard something? Or was it just the old house settling, playing tricks on my overactive imagination? My eyes darted around the shadowed attic, suddenly seeing threats in every corner, every forgotten object. The air felt colder, heavier, as I reread the final line of that entry. The truth is buried deeper than anyone can imagine, and some secrets, once unearthed, carry a cost far greater than death. A sudden, icy gust of wind seemed to snake through the attic, slamming the window shut with a violent crack. I wasn't just reading history. I was staring into an open wound, and I had the terrifying feeling that something or someone was staring back. The sudden, icy gust of wind seemed to snake through the attic, slamming the window shut with a violent crack. I wasn't just reading history. I was staring into an open wound, and I had the terrifying feeling that something or someone was staring back. My heart hammered against my ribs. I practically jumped out of my skin, dropping the diary with a loud thud that echoed in the dusty silence. The attic, moments ago a repository of forgotten memories, now felt like a cage, its shadows suddenly longer, more menacing. I scrambled back, my breath catching in my throat, my eyes darting around the dim space, half expecting to see a figure emerge from the gloom. But there was nothing, just the oppressive stillness, broken only by the frantic beat of my own pulse. It's just an old house, I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible, a pathetic attempt to rationalize the irrational. The wind. It's just the wind. But the air was still heavy. The window, which had been stubbornly stuck for years, had slammed shut with a force that felt deliberate, not accidental. My hands trembled as I cautiously bent down, retrieving the worn leather book. Its weight felt different now, heavier, imbued with a strange, almost malevolent energy. A part of me wanted to throw it back into the trunk, slam the lid, and descend the creaky stairs, never to look at it again. But the other part, the insatiably curious part, was already stronger. The fear was real, but the magnetizing pull of the unknown was even more so. I had to know. Who was this person? What secrets had they carried? The diary wasn't just a historical artifact. It was a voice crying out from the past, and I was the only one listening. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I forced myself to sit back down, the weak beam of my flashlight once again illuminating the faded script. I found the page where the diary had fallen open. A date scrawled at the top, October 12, 1953. The handwriting, while still meticulous, seemed to betray a new tension, a subtle tremor in the ink. They came for me today. Not in the dramatic fashion of the pulp novels, no screeching tires or trench coats in the alley. It was much more insidious, much more polite. A knock on the door, a man named Michael Thorne, impeccably dressed. A smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He spoke of patriotism, of duty, of a silent war being waged in the shadows. He knew things about me, things I thought were buried deep. My father's service in the OSS, my fluency in Russian, my quiet disillusionment with the post-war American dream. He painted a picture of a nation under siege, a world teetering on the brink, and me, Arthur Miller, as a potential unseen warrior. I told him I needed time to think. He simply nodded, left a number, and vanished as quietly as he arrived. But the seed was planted. The world, he said, needed men like me. Men who could see beyond the headlines, who understood the true cost of freedom. I paused, absorbing the name. Arthur Miller. A common name, almost too common for a spy, I thought, which probably made him all the more effective. The year 1953. The height of the Red Scare, McCarthyism, the Korean War fresh in the rearview mirror. The world was a powder keg, and Arthur Miller had just been handed the match. I could almost feel the chilling weight of that decision. The allure of purpose in a world consumed by paranoia. I continued reading, the words drawing me deeper into Arthur's world. November 1st, 1953. I met with Thorne again, this time in a quiet cafe, the clatter of plates a stark contrast to the gravity of our conversation. He didn't pressure me, not overtly. He simply laid out the facts, presented the stakes. The Soviets weren't just a military threat. They were an ideological virus, he claimed, infiltrating every facet of American life. He spoke of sleeper agents, of stolen secrets, of a network so vast it defied comprehension. My role, he explained, would be small at first, almost insignificant, but vital. Observation. Reporting. A quiet pair of eyes and ears in places others couldn't reach. The pay was good, surprisingly so, but it wasn't the money that swayed me. It was the appeal to something deeper, something I hadn't realized I was missing. Belonging to a cause. A secret fraternity of protectors. He spoke of a Project Nightingale. A new initiative, highly compartmentalized. My first assignment, simply to learn, to study, to prepare. He gave me a coded message, a passphrase, and a dead drop location. My life, he said, was no longer entirely my own. I felt a thrill, a tremor of fear, and an undeniable sense of destiny. Project Nightingale. The name itself was evocative, hinting at hidden songs, secret messages, and perhaps a tragic end. Arthur's initial idealism was palpable, almost naive. He saw himself as a hero in the making, a silent guardian. But the Cold War wasn't a comic book. It was a brutal, unforgiving game, and Arthur was just learning the rules. I flipped to the next entry. January 22nd, 1954. Training commenced. Not in a barracks or a gym, but in forgotten corners of the city, in hushed conversations in crowded libraries, in seemingly casual encounters that were anything but. I learned to blend, to observe without being seen, to listen without being heard. Thorne introduced me to others, always briefly, always by code names. Shadow, Echo, Ghost. They were phantoms, their faces unremarkable, their eyes holding a shared, knowing weariness. I learned to pick locks, to tail a target, to memorize intricate routes through the city's labyrinthine streets. I learned to lie, effortlessly and convincingly, until the lies became a second skin. The hardest lesson, Thorne said, was to trust no one completely, not even those on your own side. Loyalty is a luxury, Arthur, he'd said, his voice devoid of emotion. Survival is a necessity. That lesson chilled me to the bone, a constant companion in the pit of my stomach. The chill in the attic suddenly intensified, raising goosebumps on my arms. It wasn't just the words on the page anymore. It was the atmosphere, the palpable sense of dread that seemed to seep from the diary itself. Arthur's transformation, from an ordinary citizen to a meticulous instrument of espionage, was fascinating, but also profoundly unsettling. He was losing himself piece by piece to the demands of his new life. The seeds of paranoia sown by Thorne were clearly taking root. March 8, 1954. My first active assignment under Project Nightingale. A simple surveillance. A man named David Hayes, a mid-level bureaucrat in the State Department. My task, to observe his daily routine, note his contacts, his habits, his vulnerabilities. Thorne insisted it was routine, intelligence gathering. But I felt a knot in my gut the moment I saw Hayes. He was so ordinary, so unremarkable, a man who loved his morning coffee and his evening newspaper. I followed him for weeks, a shadow in his periphery. I saw him laugh with his children in the park, argue good-naturedly with his wife, Jessica, over dinner. He wasn't a spy, not a saboteur. He was just a man. And yet, Thorne's instructions were clear. Find the weakness. Manipulate if necessary. The lines began to blur. Was I protecting my country, or was I merely a tool, a predator in disguise? The questions gnawed at me, keeping me awake at night. I started leaving small, almost imperceptible signals in my reports, tiny anomalies that only someone looking very, very closely might notice. A flicker of hope that someone, somewhere, was also looking for the truth. My eyes widened. David Hayes, Jessica Hayes. These were real people Arthur was observing, potentially ruining. This wasn't just abstract espionage, it was personal, invasive. And Arthur, even then, was struggling with the morality of it. The tiny anomalies in his reports, was he trying to signal something, to expose something even in his earliest days? This was far more complex than a simple spy story. This was a man wrestling with his soul, trapped in a web of deceit. I looked up from the diary, my gaze sweeping across the attic again. The air seemed to vibrate with unspoken secrets. The feeling of being watched was stronger now, not just a vague unease, but a distinct pressure, as if the very walls were listening, judging. Was it Arthur's ghost, frustrated by his inability to tell his full story? Or was it something else, something more sinister, that had perhaps silenced him in the first place? The next entry was dated just a few weeks later. The tone had shifted dramatically. April 2, 1954. The Hayes assignment is over, but the questions remain. I filed my report, omitting the more human details, the ones that made me question my purpose. Thorne was pleased. Too pleased. He spoke of my aptitude, my ruthlessness. Ruthlessness. Is that what I am becoming? He gave me a new assignment, far more significant, he said. Project Chimera. A deep cover operation. My identity, Arthur Miller, would cease to exist. I would be given a new name, a new history, a new life. I would be sent overseas behind the Iron Curtain. My mission, to infiltrate a specific research facility, to gather intelligence on a new Soviet nuclear program. The stakes were astronomical, but the fear wasn't just of being caught by the Soviets. It was a deeper, colder fear. The way Thorne looked at me when he explained it, the absolute lack of warmth in his eyes. It was as if I was already gone, already a ghost. He said, "Remember, Arthur, some secrets are meant to stay buried. For your own good. For the good of the country. But what if the secrets were buried by our side? What if Project Chimera wasn't just about the enemy, but about something far more insidious within our own ranks? I have a terrible feeling I'm not just going into the lion's den. I'm being led there by someone I'm supposed to trust. And if I don't survive, if this diary is ever found, let it be known that Michael Thorne knows more than he lets on. He is the architect of this intricate cage." The words hung in the air, heavy and chilling. Project Chimera, a deep cover operation behind the Iron Curtain, and the explicit warning about Michael Thorne. Arthur wasn't just struggling with his conscience anymore. He was openly distrusting his handler, his superior. He was sensing betrayal, a trap. The diary wasn't just a record of a spy's life. It was a desperate confession, a cry for help from a man walking into a death sentence. And the way it ended, a direct accusation against Thorne, sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature in the attic. This wasn't just history. This was a warning from beyond the grave. A warning from beyond the grave. The words echoed in my mind, a chilling pronouncement that transformed the musty attic into a tomb, and the diary itself into a spectral voice whispering secrets in my ear. My initial excitement, that thrill of historical discovery, had curdled into a cold dread. This wasn't merely a fascinating relic. It was a live wire, humming with forgotten dangers, and I had just grasped it. The accusation against Thorne, stark and unforgiving, felt less like an entry in a dead man's journal and more like a direct, personal indictment delivered across decades. It wasn't just Robert Maxwell's life that had been threatened, but anyone who dared to uncover his truth. And now that included me. I carefully closed the diary, my fingers lingering on the worn leather. The cold of the attic no longer mattered. A different kind of chill had settled deep in my bones, a premonition that this little book, hidden away for so long, was about to unravel more than just history. It was about to unravel my life. I couldn't just leave it there. My instincts screamed at me to put it back, to seal away the secrets and walk away. But the warning, the raw emotion etched into Maxwell's final words, held me captive. It was a plea, a desperate cry from the past demanding justice, or at least recognition. I felt an inexplicable sense of responsibility, a pull I couldn't ignore. With a deep breath, I carefully tucked the diary under my arm, its weight suddenly feeling immense, as if it contained not just paper and ink, but the very essence of a man's final moments. I descended the rickety attic stairs, the silence of the house pressing in around me. Each creak of the old wood seemed amplified, each shadow deeper, as if the house itself had become aware of the dangerous knowledge I now carried. I went straight to my study, a room usually filled with the comforting scent of old books and the soft glow of my desk lamp. Tonight it felt different. The air was heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. I placed the diary reverently on my polished oak desk, its dark cover a stark contrast against the wood. My eyes scanned the room, suddenly seeing it through a new lens, not as a sanctuary, but as a potential vulnerability. The blinds were drawn, the door was locked, but the feeling of exposure persisted. I had to know. Who was Thorne? What had he done to Robert Maxwell? And what exactly was this death sentence Maxwell spoke of? My mind raced, trying to formulate a plan. My usual research methods, focused on local history and genealogy, felt woefully inadequate for this. This was spycraft, Cold War intrigue, a world shrouded in secrecy and deception. I fired up my computer, the screen's sudden brightness a jarring contrast to the dimness of the room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Where to even begin? Thorne, I typed, then added Cold War spy, intelligence, betrayal. The search results flooded my screen, an overwhelming deluge of information. There were indeed Thornes in the annals of Cold War history, minor diplomats, low-level intelligence analysts, even a few scientists suspected of passing secrets. But nothing that screamed the Thorne. No high-profile defector, no notorious double agent whose name immediately resonated with Maxwell's desperate accusation. It was like searching for a single grain of sand on a vast beach. The sheer anonymity made it more chilling. This wasn't a public figure. This was someone deliberate, hidden, powerful enough to erase their tracks. Next, I tried Robert Maxwell Cold War. Again, a scattering of results, mostly concerning a British media mogul of the same name, clearly not my Robert Maxwell. When I refined the search with terms like American spy, disappeared, or unidentified agent, the results dwindled to almost nothing. A few obscure academic papers on Cold War disappearances, a list of unaccounted for personnel from various agencies, but no specific mention of a Robert Maxwell. It was as if he had never existed, wiped from the official record, a ghost even in the digital age. The lack of information was more unsettling than any discovery could have been. It confirmed my growing suspicion. Maxwell was deep cover, meticulously erased, and Thorne was an equally shadowy figure, his betrayal so thorough that it left no public trace. This wasn't just a forgotten incident. It was a carefully buried secret. Hours slipped by, marked only by the shifting shadows in my study and the growing knot of frustration in my stomach. The more I searched, the less I found and the more isolated I felt. The quiet hum of my computer was the only sound, punctuated by the occasional creak of the house settling. Or was it settling? Each subtle sound now seemed magnified, a potential harbinger of something more. I found myself pausing, holding my breath, listening intently, my gaze darting towards the windows, towards the closed door. Had I been so naive to think I could simply uncover this without consequence? The warning. This isn't just history. This was a warning. A warning from beyond the grave, played on a loop in my head. It wasn't just a historical event. It was a living threat. And by opening that diary, by reading those words, I had stepped directly into its crosshairs. Giving up on external searches for the moment, I pushed away from my desk, rubbing my tired eyes. My gaze fell back to the diary. If the outside world offered no immediate answers, perhaps the answers lay within the diary itself, hidden in plain sight. I picked it up again, my fingers tracing the familiar contours of the cover. I opened it to the last entry, the one about Thorn. I reread the words slowly, meticulously, searching for any detail I might have missed in my initial shock. Thorn, the architect of my demise. He knew too much. The operation, compromised, a death sentence. I focused on the handwriting, the subtle pressure of the pen, the faint indentations on the page. Maxwell's despair was palpable in every stroke. My eyes scanned the margins, the spaces between words, the very texture of the aged paper. And then I saw it. It was almost imperceptible, a tiny detail that only the most careful scrutiny, under the direct beam of my desk lamp, could reveal. Not a word, not a letter, but a symbol. So faint, so small, it seemed more like a printer's error or a natural imperfection in the paper. It was etched into the bottom corner of the page, barely visible beneath the final line of Maxwell's desperate plea. It was a stylized mark, almost like a bird in flight, but with sharp, angular lines, reminiscent of a forgotten alphabet or an ancient sigil. And within the bird's wing, so tiny I almost missed it, was a single precisely drawn numeral, 7. My breath hitched. This wasn't accidental. It was too precise, too deliberately placed to be anything other than intentional. It was a mark, a clue, a hidden message woven into the fabric of the diary itself, a secret handshake from the grave. This wasn't just Maxwell's personal diary. This was a coded message, a breadcrumb trail left for someone, anyone, who might one day stumble upon his truth. And that someone, I now realized with a terrifying certainty, was me. The warning wasn't just a general caution, it was a personal invitation. An invitation into a game I didn't understand, with stakes I couldn't yet fathom. A game that had already claimed Robert Maxwell's life. And now I was holding the next piece. It wasn't another page from the diary, nor a cryptic note tucked within its aging leaves. Instead, it was an old, worn leather wallet, discovered nestled beneath a false bottom in the wooden box where the diary had been hidden. The leather was cracked and faded, the stitching frayed in places, a testament to years of use, of being carried, perhaps clutched, by Robert Maxwell himself. Its weight in my hand felt significant, not just due to its physical presence, but because of the palpable sense of history, of secrets it seemed to contain. I sat down, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, and carefully opened it. The interior was as aged as the exterior. Inside, there were a few faded photographs, one of a young woman with a kind smile, her hair styled in a way that screamed mid-20th century, another of a child, perhaps a son, laughing, blurry around the edges. There were also a couple of archaic-looking identification cards, the kind with black and white photos and typewritten details. One bore Maxwell's name, identifying him as a researcher for a defunct historical society. Another, however, listed a different name entirely, a common American name, Daniel Miller, and a vague occupation as a freelance journalist, issued in a different state. This was it then. The first tangible proof of his double life, the chameleonic existence of a spy. Beneath these relics, tucked into a slim pocket, was a small tarnished silver coin, an old $50, and a single crisp dollar bill, far older than any I'd ever seen. It was all so mundane, so ordinary, yet imbued with an extraordinary sense of significance because it belonged to Maxwell. I ran my fingers along the inside of the wallet, feeling the texture of the aged leather, the slight stiffness of the card slots. And then my thumb brushed against something unusual. A faint ridge, barely perceptible, along the seam of what appeared to be the back panel of the wallet. It was too firm to be a natural fold in the leather, too straight to be a mere imperfection. My breath hitched. I pressed gently, then more firmly along the ridge. There was a subtle give, a faint click that was more felt than heard. With a surge of adrenaline, I carefully pried at the edge. Slowly, meticulously, a section of the back panel began to lift, revealing a shallow, perfectly concealed compartment. My hands trembled as I peered inside. It was empty save for one item. A minuscule, tightly folded piece of paper, no larger than a postage stamp, secured with a thin, almost invisible thread. I carefully extracted the paper, my fingers fumbling slightly with its delicate edge. Unfolding it was a painstaking process, each crease threatening to tear the brittle material. Finally, it lay flat in my palm. My eyes scanned the surface, expecting a coded message, a name, a confession. What I saw instead sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with the cool air in the room. It was a series of seemingly random numbers and letters, meticulously printed in a tiny, precise hand. Not a cipher in the traditional sense, at least not one I immediately recognized. There were sequences of digits, then a cluster of letters, then more numbers. It looked like gibberish, an abstract puzzle, yet I knew with absolute certainty that it was anything but. This wasn't some idle doodle. This was Maxwell's final message, his last secret. I spent the next few hours poring over the paper, comparing it to the diary entries, searching for any pattern, any repeated phrase, any hint of a key. The diary was written in plain English, albeit with veiled references and metaphorical language, but this paper was different. This was raw data. I tried simple substitution ciphers, frequency analysis, even historical encryption methods I vaguely remembered from documentaries. Nothing. The numbers and letters remained stubbornly meaningless. Frustration began to mount, thick and heavy in the air around me. I felt the weight of Maxwell's death, the unseen game pressing down on me. He had died for this, for whatever this scrap of paper contained. I couldn't fail him. I couldn't fail myself. I took a break, pacing my small living room, trying to clear my head. My gaze fell upon the diary, still open on my desk. I picked it up, flipping through the pages again, not looking for clues, but just absorbing the narrative, trying to get inside Maxwell's head. And then a tiny detail, something I'd overlooked in my initial haste, caught my eye. On one of the later pages, where Maxwell spoke of the shadow game and the pieces on the board, there was a subtle, almost imperceptible indentation in the paper, as if something had been pressed hard against it. It corresponded to a specific date, months before his disappearance. I held the small folded paper from the wallet to the light, then, on a whim, placed it over the indentation in the diary. It wasn't a perfect match, but the shape, the faint outline sparked an idea. What if the diary itself wasn't the key, but a tool? What if the numbers corresponded to something external, something Maxwell would have access to, something universally recognized? My mind raced. Coordinates? A map? A specific book? The Cold War context screamed dead drop or rendezvous point. I looked at the numbers again. Several sequences began with 38 or 77. Latitude and longitude. My heart hammered. This wasn't a code to be deciphered with a key. It was a set of geographical coordinates, intermingled with other data. I quickly grabbed my phone and started typing the numbers into a mapping application, combining the sequences, experimenting with different formats. It was painstaking work, some numbers clearly latitude, others longitude. The letters were trickier. They appeared to be abbreviations, perhaps for a specific location or a message. After several tense minutes of trial and error, my fingers flying across the screen, a location finally resolved itself. My breath hitched. It was a specific bench within a relatively secluded section of the National Arboretum in Washington, D.C., a place known for its serene beauty, but also its vastness. A perfect place for a discreet meeting. But that wasn't all. Following the coordinates, there was another string of numbers and letters. 0320241000 EST. My blood ran cold. March 20th, 2024. 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today's date. Today. And then after that, a single chilling word, printed in the same tiny precise hand. Overture. Overture. The beginning of something. A prelude. A first movement. It wasn't just a set of coordinates and a date. It was an invitation. An invitation to a specific place at a specific time to witness or participate in something Maxwell had set in motion. Something that was happening today. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Robert Maxwell, a man who had been dead for months, had left a message, a meticulously planned dead drop or a warning, designed to be found and acted upon, not in the past but in the present. His game wasn't over. It was still playing out, and he had orchestrated it from beyond the grave. And now I was the unwitting participant, the one holding the latest piece. My mind reeled. The warning in the diary, the shadows always watch, the game with no end. It all coalesced into a terrifying reality. This wasn't just an archaeological dig into a forgotten spy's life. This was an active situation, a ticking clock. Someone was expecting this message to be found, or perhaps someone was waiting at that bench for someone to show up. And if I didn't go, if I didn't act, what would happen? What was Maxwell trying to prevent or to reveal? The fear was cold and sharp, but beneath it, a powerful current of curiosity and a strange sense of responsibility began to surge. Maxwell had trusted that this message would be found, that its recipient would understand its urgency. He had laid out a breadcrumb trail, knowing it might be his only legacy. I looked at the small folded paper, then at the map on my phone showing the National Arboretum, the pin marking the specific bench. 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I glanced at the clock. It was already past 8:30. I had less than an hour and a half to get to Washington, D.C., to a public park, to a specific bench where I had no idea what or who might be waiting. The warning wasn't just a general caution, it was a personal invitation. An invitation into a game I didn't understand, with stakes I couldn't yet fathom. A game that had already claimed Robert Maxwell's life. And now I was holding the next piece. My fingers trembled as I picked up the journal. It wasn't just any old notebook. It felt heavy, not with paper but with secrets. The leather cover was worn smooth in places, the corners dog-eared, as if it had been carried, read, and hidden countless times over decades. It wasn't a diary in the traditional sense, at least not one that belonged to Robert Maxwell, not directly. The first page, neatly inscribed in elegant, looping handwriting, read, "The Journal of Agent Nightingale." Nightingale. The name alone conjured images of shadows and whispers. I flipped past a few blank pages, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs, until I found the first entry. The ink was faded, the paper brittle, but the words were stark and clear, dated in a hand that was certainly not Robert's, but perhaps Robert had been the keeper, the inheritor of this chilling legacy. Asterisk November 12, 1962. Berlin. The air here bites deeper than the frost. The wall looms, a scar across the city, and every shadow seems to hold a pair of eyes. I've made contact with the broker. He's a slippery eel, but he has the information we need on Project Chimera. The drop is set for tomorrow midnight, checkpoint Charlie. My handler Orion warns discretion is paramount. One wrong move, and I'm just another ghost in the snow. Asterisk. My breath hitched.
1962 Berlin.
Checkpoint Charlie. Project Chimera. This wasn't just a personal recollection, it was a mission log. Robert Maxwell, the quiet, unassuming antique dealer, had been connected to something far grander, far more dangerous than anything I could have imagined. Agent Nightingale. Who was Nightingale? Was it Robert himself adopting a code name? Or was it someone else entirely, someone whose story Robert had been guarding? The mention of Orion and the broker solidified the Cold War spy narrative, pulling me deeper into a labyrinth of espionage and double-crosses. I turned the page, desperate for more. Asterisk November 15, 1962. The drop went sideways. The broker was a no-show. Instead, I found a dead man in the alley, a message pinned to his chest. Nightingale sings no more. It was a trap. I barely made it out. Orion is furious, suspecting a leak. He's ordered me to lay low, but I can't. Not with Chimera still out there. The stakes are too high. Someone inside is compromised. I trust no one now, not even Orion fully. I have to find the truth myself. The key is in the cipher, the one I created for Margaret. She's the only one who knows it. Asterisk. A cold dread began to seep into my bones. This wasn't just history. This was a live wire. Nightingale sings no more. A threat. And a cipher, a key mentioned in the same breath. My eyes darted to the small ornate brass key I'd found alongside the journal. Could this be that key? The one that unlocked Margaret's cipher? But who was Margaret? And what was Project Chimera? The phrase "stakes are too high" echoed in my mind, a chilling premonition of the danger that still lingered decades later. I continued to read, the entries becoming more frantic, less formal. Asterisk December 1st, 1962. Back in the States. Orion has me reassigned, but I'm still working on Chimera in secret. It's bigger than we thought. A program designed to destabilize not just politically but psychologically. A weapon of the mind. I've reached out to Margaret. She's scared, says she's been watched. I told her to use the dead drop at the old library, the one behind the loose brick in the west wall. Only use the cipher. No names. No direct contact. It's too risky. If anything happens to me, she holds the key to everything. Asterisk. My eyes widened. The old library. The loose brick. This wasn't some abstract historical account. This was a set of instructions, a breadcrumb trail laid out by a desperate spy. And the key I was holding in my hand. It was all connected. Robert Maxwell hadn't just found this diary. He was actively involved in its secrets, perhaps even continuing Nightingale's mission. Was Robert Margaret? Or was he a descendant, tasked with protecting her secrets? The next entry sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cool air in the room. Asterisk December 15th, 1962. Margaret never showed. The dead drop was empty. I've tried her usual contacts, but they vanished. Orion is closing in, asking too many questions about my unauthorized movements. I think he's running damage control, trying to bury Chimera and anyone who knows about it. I have to go underground. The journal goes with me. If I don't make it out, find the Phoenix. They'll know what to do. The location of the Phoenix is hidden in plain sight, encoded in the inscription of the grandfather clock in the old Maxwell estate, the one Robert always admired. Remember the riddle. Time's winged chariot, still and grand, holds secrets from a distant land. When shadows fall and whispers cease, the Phoenix brings a strange release. Asterisk. My blood ran cold. The Maxwell estate. Robert. This wasn't just a random connection. It was deeply personal. Robert Maxwell wasn't just guarding someone else's secrets. He was intertwined with them, perhaps even born into them. The grandfather clock. I remembered it vividly. A magnificent dark oak piece that stood in the foyer of Robert's ancestral home, now a private museum. I'd seen it countless times, admired its intricate carvings, never once suspecting it held a coded message. Time's winged chariot, still and grand. Robert had inherited the house, and with it, this chilling legacy. The final entry in Nightingale's journal was short, scrawled, and almost illegible, as if written in haste or under duress. Asterisk January 3rd, 1963. They're closing in. Orion sent a message. The hunt is on. I made a mistake. I trusted the wrong person. The only way out is to disappear entirely. I'm leaving this journal along with the key, with someone I believe I can trust implicitly, someone who has no direct ties to the agency, someone who will understand the gravity of these secrets. My only hope is that one day, decades from now, the truth about Chimera will finally see the light. Protect this. Protect the Phoenix. And remember, the real danger isn't just what they did, but what they might still do. Asterisk. The entry ended abruptly. There were no more pages, no more words from Agent Nightingale. The journal simply stopped, a chilling silence after a desperate plea. I sat there, the journal heavy on my lap, the small brass key clutched in my hand. Robert Maxwell, the man who had been my mentor, my friend, had been the someone I believe I can trust implicitly. He had been the guardian of Agent Nightingale's last will and testament, a silent sentinel protecting a decades-old secret. And now I was that sentinel. The weight of that realization pressed down on me. Robert hadn't just died. He had been protecting this. Had his death been a consequence of these very secrets? The hunt is on. Nightingale's words echoed, transforming from a historical warning into a present-day threat. Someone was still hunting. Someone still wanted to bury Project Chimera. And now they knew Robert had the journal. They knew he had the key. And if they knew that, they would eventually know I had it. The old library, the loose brick, the grandfather clock, the riddle. These weren't just historical footnotes. They were active leads, a treasure map to a Cold War ghost. Nightingale had entrusted Robert, and Robert, in turn, had unknowingly passed that trust to me. But the final line of the newspaper clipping, the one folded with the journal, came rushing back with a renewed, terrifying clarity. Secrets have consequences. Robert had paid the ultimate price for his. Was I next? I carefully placed the journal back into its hidden compartment, the key tucked securely into my pocket. I needed to think. I needed a plan. But before I could formulate one, before I could even process the full scope of what I just read, my phone vibrated. It was a text message from an unknown number. The message was brief, chillingly precise. The nightingale has found a new keeper. We know where you are. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a random threat. Someone knew. Someone was watching. The game wasn't just starting. It had already begun, and I was unknowingly caught in its deadly crosshairs. The warning wasn't just a general caution. It was a personal invitation. An invitation into a game I didn't understand, with stakes I couldn't yet fathom. A game that had already claimed Robert Maxwell's life. And now it was coming for me. The chilling certainty of those invisible crosshairs sent a jolt of ice through my veins. Robert Maxwell hadn't just died. He'd been silenced. And now the same unseen force was tightening its grip around me. The air in the room, once merely stale, now felt suffocating, heavy with the weight of unseen eyes. Every creak of the old floorboards, every distant siren, seemed to amplify the gnawing paranoia. My mind raced, trying to grasp the impossible. Who knew I had the diary? How did they know? And what exactly did they want? The initial impulse was panic, a desperate urge to run, to bury the diary, to erase every trace of my involvement. But where would I run? And how could I erase what I already knew? The warning wasn't just a threat. It was a challenge. And if I fled now, I'd forever be looking over my shoulder, haunted by Robert's fate and the unanswered questions that burned within me. No, running wasn't an option. The only way out was through. I had to understand this game, understand the players, and understand the stakes before they came for me. I picked up the worn leather-bound diary again, its pages feeling heavier, imbued with a newfound terrifying significance. It wasn't just Robert's personal reflections anymore. It was a ticking time bomb, a key to a secret that someone was willing to kill for. My gaze fell upon the last entry I deciphered, the one mentioning Black Swan and Project Nightingale, the one that ended with the stark warning. They are closer than you think. Trust no one. The words echoed in my mind, a spectral whisper from the grave. Trust no one. That meant no police, no government agencies, no one I could turn to. I was alone in this. The realization was both terrifying and strangely liberating. If I couldn't trust anyone, then my only recourse was to trust myself and the clues Robert had left behind. I returned to the diary with a renewed, almost frantic intensity. Every word, every doodle, every seemingly innocuous detail now held the potential for a hidden message. I scrutinized the margins, held pages up to the light, even ran my fingers over the paper, searching for any subtle indentation or variation in texture. My eyes scanned for patterns, for anomalies, for anything that didn't quite fit. The hours blurred into an obsessive blur of concentration. Then, buried deep within a seemingly mundane entry about diplomatic protocols from the late 1980s, I found it. Not a word, but a series of faint, almost invisible pinpricks, arranged in a subtle grid pattern around a specific paragraph. It was so subtle, so expertly done, that it could easily be dismissed as wear and tear on the aged paper. But something about its deliberate precision, its geometric regularity, screamed intent. This wasn't accidental. This was a code. The paragraph itself was boilerplate, discussing the importance of secure communications during a summit. But the pinpricks highlighted specific letters within certain words. I carefully transcribed the paragraph, then meticulously circled each letter indicated by a pinprick. It took several attempts, my hands trembling with anticipation and fear, before a jumbled sequence of letters began to emerge. GRAYSONOLDBRIDGNINEPMSTARKSTATUEDIGLOWNINGSUN. It was a string of gibberish at first glance, but the initial letters, Grayson, immediately caught my attention. Grayson, was that a name? Or part of a location? I tried to break it down, looking for common phrases or names. Old Bridge, 9 p.m. Stark Statue, Diglow, Glow, NANGSUN. NANGSUN felt like a misspelling, or maybe a partial word. Ning Sun? No, it didn't make sense. I went back to the pinpricks, rechecking them. Could it simply be Nine Sun? Or Ning SU? This was frustrating. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to slow down. Robert was a spy. He wouldn't make it easy. I looked at the string again, focusing on the context of the diary. Cold War. Spies. Dead drops. It had to be a rendezvous, a location, and a time. Grayson Old Bridge, 9 p.m. Stark statue, dig low, Ning sun. Grayson Old Bridge. That sounded like a specific place. It had to be a real location. I pulled out my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. Grayson Old Bridge in the United States. To my surprise, several results popped up, mostly small, historic bridges in rural areas. One, however, stood out: Grayson Memorial Bridge, spanning a lesser-known river just outside a quiet town in upstate New York. It was known for its distinctive, almost brutalist concrete design, a stark statue in itself, especially under a setting sun. That hit me. Stark statue. The bridge itself could be the statue. And 9 p.m. time. Everything was falling into place, except for the last bit. Dig low, Ning sun. Dig low. That implied something buried or hidden beneath. But Ning sun? I stared at it, trying every permutation. Then a thought struck me. What if it wasn't a misspelling but an inversion? What if the letters were meant to be read differently? I looked at the original paragraph in the diary again, at the context of secure communications. Then it clicked. Ning sun wasn't a word. It was an acronym or part of one. And dig low wasn't dig in the ground. It was digital low, referring to a frequency or a specific type of signal. This was a spy's code, not a simple treasure map. What if Ning sun meant Nightingale sun? As in, Project Nightingale was somehow connected to the sun, or a specific time of day. No, that felt too abstract. I went back to the code, tracing the letters again. GRAYSONOLDBRIDGNINEPM, STARKSTATUEDIGLOWNINGSUN. Then I saw it. The last four letters. SUNG. If Ning was a prefix and sun was a suffix, maybe it was a fragmented word. But what if Ning sun was a reference to an object, or a person related to the sun? No, I was overthinking it. Dig low. 9 p.m. Grayson Old Bridge. Stark statue. What if Ning sun was a sound, a frequency, a specific type of signal that would be active at 9 p.m.? I scoured the diary for any other mention of dig low or Ning sun. Nothing. But then I remembered Robert's other methods. His love for old tech, for things overlooked. He wouldn't rely on something too high-tech, too easily traceable. My eyes fell on a small, almost imperceptible sketch on the back cover of the diary. It looked like a simplified diagram of a radio receiver, with a dial marked SW, shortwave radio, and next to it, a series of numbers, 7.125 MHz. Could dig low Ning sun be a shortwave frequency or a burst transmission? Dig low could mean a low-frequency broadcast, and Ning sun could be a specific, coded burst of data, like a number station or a dead drop signal. At 9 p.m., the pieces started to click with a terrifying clarity. Robert wasn't just leaving clues for me to find a hidden document. He was asking me to listen, to tune into a specific frequency at a specific time, at a specific location to receive a final message. A message that was likely connected to Black Swan and Project Nightingale. The idea was audacious, dangerous, and undeniably thrilling. It was exactly the kind of elaborate analog dead drop a Cold War spy would devise. He wouldn't just bury a flash drive. He'd create a puzzle, a test of wits, ensuring only someone persistent and clever enough would find the truth. But what was Black Swan? The diary hinted at something catastrophic, something that could be unleashed. And Project Nightingale? Was it an attempt to prevent Black Swan, or was it a separate, equally dangerous endeavor? I looked around my apartment, the shadows now seeming to deepen, to conceal more than they revealed. The crosshairs weren't just a metaphor. They were a reality. Someone knew I was getting close. This message, this rendezvous, was my only chance to understand what Robert had sacrificed his life for, and what I was now risking mine for. Grayson Memorial Bridge, upstate New York. 9 p.m. A shortwave frequency. It was a long drive, a journey into the unknown, and into the heart of a danger I was only just beginning to comprehend. The thought of stepping out of my safe, mundane life and into the shadowy world of Cold War espionage was exhilarating, terrifying. But there was no turning back. Robert's last secret was waiting for me, and I was going to find it, no matter the cost. My life and perhaps something far greater depended on it. My life and perhaps something far greater depended on it. The diary became my world. I slept with it beside me, ate with it open on the table, and every waking moment was spent poring over its brittle pages, searching for the ghost of Robert's final message. I'd read it countless times, memorizing passages, cross-referencing names and dates, but the ultimate secret remained elusive. It felt like standing at the edge of a vast ocean, knowing there was a treasure beneath, but lacking the map to its precise location. The weight of the world, or at least Robert's world, pressed down on me, a heavy cloak of responsibility and dread. Every shadow seemed to lengthen. Every quiet creak of the floorboards sounded like an approaching footstep. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a temporary hideout. Days blurred into a single relentless quest. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, my mind a tangled web of aliases, dead drops, and coded phrases. I started seeing patterns in mundane things, hearing whispers in the wind. The line between obsession and necessity blurred. I knew I was close, I could feel it in my bones, a prickling sensation that ran down my spine whenever I touched the worn leather cover. There had to be something more. Something I'd missed, something beyond the written words. Robert was too meticulous, too clever, to leave his most dangerous secret in plain sight. He was a master of misdirection, a craftsman of hidden truths. I started examining the diary not as a book of words, but as a physical object. I ran my fingers over the leather binding, felt the texture of the aged paper, listened for any subtle sounds. I held it up to the light, searching for watermarks, hidden inks, or microscopic perforations. Nothing. Just the familiar scent of old paper and the ghosts of forgotten memories. Frustration gnawed at me, a sharp, insistent ache. I was missing something fundamental, something so obvious it was invisible. Then a fleeting thought struck me. Robert had often written about the importance of the unseen. Not just the unseen enemy, but the unseen message, the unseen mechanism. I remembered a particular passage, a seemingly innocuous entry detailing his love for antique clocks and their hidden springs. It was a throwaway line, one I dismissed as personal musings. But what if it wasn't? What if it was a hint? I went back to the specific page where he'd mentioned the clocks. It was page 73. I ran my thumb along the edge of the page, pressing gently. Nothing. I tried again, pressing harder then softer, varying the pressure. My fingers brushed against a faint, almost imperceptible indentation near the spine, about halfway down the page. It was so subtle, I could have easily dismissed it as a manufacturing flaw in the paper, but something about it felt deliberate. I pressed again, gently with the pad of my thumb. A tiny click echoed, barely audible, as if from deep within the diary's core. My heart leaped into my throat. I held my breath, my eyes wide with disbelief and a surge of adrenaline. I carefully pried open the front cover. Near the spine, a small spring-loaded compartment had popped open, revealing a shallow recess. Inside, nestled against the aged cardboard, was a tiny tarnished silver key and a folded piece of paper, no larger than a postage stamp. My hands trembled as I carefully extracted the contents. The key was ornate with intricate scrollwork, unlike any modern key I'd ever seen. The paper was even older than the diary itself, fragile and yellowed. I unfolded it with painstaking care. On it, written in Robert's unmistakable precise hand, were two lines. Asterisk asterisk libris. Edificium. Septimus. Undecimus. Asterisk. Asterisk 40.7128N. 74.0060W. My mind raced. Latin. Robert had a fondness for classical languages. Libris for books, edificium for building, septimus for 7th, undecimus for 11th. Books, building, 7th, 11th, and then the coordinates. My phone was in my pocket. With shaking fingers, I quickly typed the numbers into a mapping application. The coordinates centered on a specific location in New York City. The old, imposing New York Public Library on 5th Avenue, a landmark Robert had often admired in his diary entries, not for its grandeur, but for its anonymity, its vastness, a perfect place for secrets to hide. The Latin phrases, books, building, 7th, 11th, 7th and 11th. Could they be shelf numbers, floor numbers, or perhaps something more subtle like a date or a time? Given the context of books and building, a library made perfect sense. I considered the 7th and 11th as possibly referring to sections or aisles, or even the 7th book on the 11th shelf, or the 11th book on the 7th shelf. Robert was always precise but also deceptively simple. A cold knot of dread tightened in my stomach. This wasn't just another clue. This was an instruction, a direct path to whatever Robert had hidden. And if I had found it, who else might be looking? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. The stakes had just escalated from a historical puzzle to a very real immediate danger. I had to move, and I had to move fast. I quickly packed a small bag, just essentials. My phone, a portable charger, some cash, a change of clothes, and of course the diary, the key, and the cryptic note. I dressed in inconspicuous clothing, an old baseball cap, a pair of sunglasses. I wanted to blend in, to be just another face in the bustling city. Before leaving, I meticulously wiped down every surface I had touched in my apartment, a paranoid habit I'd picked up from Robert's own meticulous notes on operational security. The journey to the city felt like an eternity. Every car that pulled up alongside me, every stranger who looked my way, became a potential threat. My heart pounded a relentless rhythm against my ribs. I kept glancing in my rearview mirror, convinced I was being followed. The world outside the car windows seemed to blur into a kaleidoscope of suspicion and fear. Robert's warnings about the unseen eyes echoed in my mind. I parked several blocks away from the library, opting for a longer walk through the crowded streets. The sheer volume of people was a double-edged sword. Good for blending in, but also excellent cover for someone to tail me unnoticed. I walked with purpose, but also with an acute awareness of my surroundings, using storefront reflections to check behind me, pausing at bus stops to observe the flow of pedestrians. The library stood majestic and imposing, a fortress of knowledge. Its grand marble steps seemed to loom over me, an invitation and a challenge. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing pulse, and ascended the steps, merging with the stream of tourists and scholars. Inside, the vastness of the main hall was overwhelming, its hushed atmosphere a stark contrast to the chaos of my mind. I made my way through the labyrinthine corridors, searching for the specific section. The Latin clues were still my primary guide. Asterisk libris, edificium, septimus, undecimus. Asterisk I interpreted septimus and undecimus as 7th and 11th, perhaps a section number and a shelf number, or even the 7th aisle and the 11th shelf within that aisle. It was an educated guess, but it felt right. Robert loved these kinds of layered clues. I finally located a quiet corner, less frequented, filled with dusty tomes on old European history. This felt like Robert. He had a particular interest in post-war European politics. I began my search, my eyes scanning the shelf markers. I found a section marked European History, Post-World War II, Section 7. My pulse quickened. This was it. Now for undecimus. I counted 11 shelves up from the bottom. The 11th shelf. My eyes darted along the books, a seemingly random collection of academic texts. I ran my hand along the spines, feeling for anything out of place. Nothing. Was I wrong? Had I misinterpreted the clue? Then my fingers brushed against a book that felt slightly different. It was an old leather-bound volume on the history of the Berlin Wall. Its spine faded, its pages yellowed, but it felt hollow. I pulled it out. It was a dummy book, ingeniously crafted. The spine and cover were real, but the pages had been hollowed out, leaving a deep rectangular cavity. And inside that cavity was a small sealed metal box, no larger than a brick. Its surface was cold to the touch, and it felt surprisingly heavy. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drum. This was it. This was what Robert had risked everything for. I carefully extracted the box. As I did, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A shadow. Across the aisle, partially obscured by a towering bookshelf, a figure stood motionless, watching me. They were barely visible, a dark silhouette against the muted light, but I felt their gaze, cold and unwavering. Panic seized me. My breath hitched. I clutched the box to my chest, my mind screaming. I wasn't alone. Someone else knew about this. Someone else was here, waiting. Robert's warnings, the constant fear he lived with, suddenly became terrifyingly real. I didn't hesitate. I shoved the dummy book back into its place, pretending to browse the surrounding shelves, my eyes darting frantically for an escape route. The figure didn't move, but I felt their presence, a palpable threat in the quiet library. I needed to get out. Now. I turned, feigning casualness, and began to walk, slowly at first, then picking up speed, heading towards the nearest exit. I didn't dare look back, but the sensation of being watched was overwhelming, a burning pressure on my back. I burst out of the library doors, the cold city air a shock against my flushed face. I didn't stop weaving through the crowded sidewalks, my grip tight on the metal box. I hailed a cab, jumped in, and gave an address several blocks from where I'd parked my car. I risked a glance out the back window. No one seemed to be following, but the image of that silent, shadowy figure was seared into my mind. I was safe for now, but the game had changed. I was no longer just an investigator, a decipherer of old secrets. I was a target, and in my hands I held a heavy metal box. The final piece of Robert's puzzle. What lay inside? What something far greater had he hidden away, protected by layers of codes and the chilling silence of a watchful enemy? The answer was within reach, but the world had just become a much more dangerous place. The world had indeed become a much more dangerous place. The air in Robert's old apartment, once heavy with the dust of forgotten history, now vibrated with an electric hum of immediate threat. Sarah's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The sudden chilling awareness that she was no longer merely a curious researcher, but an unwitting participant in a game she barely understood, was suffocating. She glanced at the diary, its worn leather cover suddenly feeling like a ticking bomb. Someone knew. Someone was coming. Her gaze fell to the intricate mechanism Robert had described. The hidden catch within the diary's spine, revealed only by the precise alignment of specific dates. Her fingers, trembling slightly, traced the worn edges. January 15, 1961, October 27, 1962, June 26, 1963. Dates of profound global tension, etched into history. With a deep breath, Sarah carefully rotated the tiny, almost invisible dials Robert had fashioned into the spine's decorative elements. A soft click echoed in the sudden silence of the room. A section of the diary's back cover, disguised as part of the binding, sprang open with barely a whisper. It revealed a shallow velvet-lined cavity. Inside, nestled securely, was not another journal entry, nor a photograph, but a small rectangular object. It was an antique microfiche reader, compact and surprisingly robust, clearly designed for clandestine use. Beside it, tucked into a slim slot, was a single obsidian black microfiche card. Sarah's breath hitched. This was it. The core of Robert's life's work, his final desperate message. The something far greater he had alluded to. Her hand shook as she carefully extracted the microfiche and slid it into the reader. The tiny screen flickered to life, its dim green glow illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. And then the images began to scroll. It wasn't a single document, but a compilation. Pages of coded text, interspersed with photographs of men and women she didn't recognize, their faces stark and unsmiling. There were maps marked with unfamiliar symbols, financial ledgers detailing massive, untraceable transactions, and most chillingly, transcripts of conversations. These weren't just Cold War intelligence reports. These were different. They spoke of a vast, intricate network, not aligned with the known powers of the East or West, but manipulating both. The microfiche detailed a clandestine organization, referred to only as the Janus Group, operating in the shadows since before the official start of the Cold War. Their goal, as Robert's meticulous notes indicated, was not victory for a nation, but perpetual geopolitical instability. They profited from chaos, from proxy wars, from the arms race, subtly influencing decisions on both sides to maintain a delicate, profitable balance of terror. Robert had uncovered evidence of their infiltration into high-level intelligence agencies, military commands, and even political offices across multiple nations. He had names. Code names, certainly, but also dates, locations, and specific events where the Janus Group's influence had subtly tipped the scales, prolonging conflicts, escalating tensions, and ensuring their continued power and wealth. Sarah saw references to a botched summit in the early 60s, a seemingly random defection that had sparked a diplomatic crisis, and even the mysterious disappearance of a key scientist, all orchestrated by this hidden hand. Robert's final entries on the microfiche were not just reports, they were a desperate plea. He had tried to expose them, to warn the world, but his attempts had been systematically thwarted, his credibility undermined, his allies silenced. He realized he was up against something far more pervasive and powerful than any single government. His retirement hadn't been voluntary, it was a forced retreat, a desperate attempt to survive long enough to hide this truth. The full horror of what Robert had sacrificed, what he had lived with, what he had died trying to protect, washed over Sarah. This wasn't just a historical footnote. This was a living, breathing conspiracy that had shaped the modern world, and was likely still shaping it. The implications were staggering. If this information got out, it would dismantle decades of accepted history, shatter trust in international institutions, and potentially ignite a global firestorm. A sudden sharp crack from the hallway outside the apartment jolted Sarah back to the present. It sounded like a floorboard groaning under weight. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to the microfiche reader, still glowing with its terrible truths. They were here. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the shock. She couldn't stay. Robert had designed this apartment as a tomb for his secret, not a fortress. She had to move, and she had to take the microfiche. With fumbling fingers, she ejected the tiny card and tucked it securely into the hidden compartment of the diary, snapping the cover shut just as she heard a faint scrape, closer this time, from the other side of the door. There was no time to think, only to react. Robert had mentioned a secondary escape route in his notes, a fire escape, accessible through the kitchen window. It was a long shot, but her only shot. Clutching the diary to her chest, Sarah scrambled silently across the living room, her movements swift and desperate. The kitchen was dimly lit by the faint glow of the city outside. She yanked open the window, the old wood groaning in protest. The cold night air rushed in, a welcome shock against her panic-heated face. Below, the city sprawled, a maze of light and shadow. The fire escape was rusty, its metal stairs a precarious descent into the alley below. She didn't hesitate. One leg over the sill, then the other, her hands gripping the cold, grimy railing. As she lowered herself onto the first landing, a crash echoed from inside the apartment. The front door had been forced open. Shouts, muffled but urgent, followed. They were inside. Sarah didn't look back. She clambered down the metal stairs, each clang a thunderclap in the silent alley. Her heart pounded, a drumbeat of terror and adrenaline. She reached the ground, landing awkwardly on the uneven pavement. The alley was dark, smelling of damp earth and refuse. She sprinted, her shoes slapping against the ground, the diary clutched tight. She burst out of the alley onto a bustling street, blending instantly into the stream of late-night pedestrians. Her mind raced, a jumble of images from the microfiche and the terrifying reality of her escape. The Janus group. They were real. They were powerful. And now they knew about her. Where could she go? Who could she trust? The information she carried was a toxic payload, capable of destroying lives and reputations on a global scale. It implicated people in positions of power, people whose names might be recognizable even to her. Robert's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one. But how could she fight an invisible enemy alone? She hailed a taxi, her voice surprisingly steady as she gave a random address across town. Inside the cab, the city lights blurred past, a kaleidoscope of false security. She pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over her contact list. Her best friend, Jessica? Her old college professor, David, who specialized in Cold War history. No, this wasn't something she could explain over the phone, or even to someone who wouldn't understand the depth of the danger. Bringing them into this would only put them in harm's way. Robert had mentioned one name, a contact he trusted, in a heavily encrypted footnote on the microfiche. A former operative codenamed Phoenix. No real name, no current location, just a cryptic reference to an old bookstore in a forgotten corner of the city, and a specific phrase, "The old bird still sings at midnight." It was a long shot, a desperate gamble based on a dead man's last hope. The taxi pulled up to her destination. Sarah paid the driver, her hand shaking slightly as she exchanged the money. She stepped out into the cool night, the diary a heavy, pulsing weight in her bag. She was a ghost in her own city, hunted by an enemy she couldn't see, carrying a truth that could reshape the world. She walked aimlessly at first, then with a growing sense of purpose. The old bookstore. The old bird still sings at midnight. It was past midnight now. Was it a physical place, or another one of Robert's elaborate metaphors? She had to try. The microfiche, the diary, Robert's sacrifice. It all demanded she try. As she navigated the labyrinthine streets, a dark sedan, its windows tinted opaque, seemed to appear and disappear in her periphery. A chill ran down her spine. Was it paranoia, or were they already on her trail? She quickened her pace, ducking into a crowded subway station, hoping to lose herself in the throngs of people. The subway train rumbled to life, carrying her deeper into the city's underbelly. With each passing station, Sarah felt a growing sense of isolation, but also a fierce determination. Robert had been alone too for so long. He had entrusted her with his legacy, with the truth. She couldn't fail him. She emerged from the subway in a quiet, almost deserted neighborhood, far from the glittering skyscrapers of downtown. The streets here were lined with aging brick buildings, their storefronts mostly dark. She checked her phone for a map, trying to locate any bookstore. There was one, tucked away on a side street, an antique sign barely legible above its entrance. The Raven's Quill. Raven. Phoenix. Birds. Could this be it? Her heart hammered as she approached the darkened storefront. The streetlights cast long, eerie shadows. The air was still, silent except for the distant wail of a siren. She peered through the dusty window. The interior was a chaotic jumble of old books, stacked high on shelves that reached to the ceiling. It looked abandoned, closed for years. But then she noticed it. A faint, almost imperceptible flicker of light from the very back of the store, deep within the shadows. And as she strained her ears, she thought she heard something else. A faint, melancholic melody, played on an old, out-of-tune piano. The old bird still sings at midnight. Sarah's hand reached for the doorknob. It was cold, heavy. She hesitated, a wave of doubt washing over her. Was this a trap? Was Phoenix even real? Or was she walking straight into the jaws of the Janus group? But what other choice did she have? The weight of Robert's diary, of the truth contained within, pressed down on her. She had to know. She had to try. With a deep, shaky breath, she turned the knob. It clicked, and the heavy door creaked open, revealing a deeper darkness and the faint, haunting strains of the piano music. She stepped inside, the door swinging shut behind her with a soft thud, plunging her into the heart of Robert's final, most dangerous secret. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a deeper darkness and the faint, haunting strains of the piano music. She stepped inside, the door swinging shut behind her with a soft thud, plunging her into the heart of Robert's final, most dangerous secret. The air in the hidden room was thick with the scent of old paper, dust, and something metallic, like forgotten machinery. Her phone's flashlight beam cut through the gloom, dancing across high, vaulted ceilings and walls lined with shelves packed with books and what looked like antiquated electronic equipment. It was a space frozen in time, a clandestine library and laboratory from a bygone era. The piano music, a melancholic and intricate Chopin nocturne, resonated from the center of the room. Emily moved towards it, her footsteps muffled by a thick, dark rug. Her light fell upon a magnificent grand piano, its polished wood gleaming faintly, its keys moving with an ethereal grace, as if played by an invisible maestro. It was a player piano, she realized, an advanced model for its time, but what made it play now? She circled the instrument, her heart thrumming. On the music stand, instead of sheet music, was a tightly rolled perforated paper scroll, a piano roll. It was old, yellowed, and intricate. As she leaned closer, she noticed something etched subtly into the wood above the keyboard, almost invisible against the dark grain. A small, stylized nightingale, the symbol from the diary. Her fingers traced the symbol, then moved to the piano keys. She pressed one, and the music faltered for a beat, then resumed its haunting melody. It was a living, breathing artifact of Robert's past, a mechanical ghost of his presence. But why the music? Was it a comfort, a warning, or a clue? She examined the piano more closely, her gaze sweeping over every curve and joint. Her fingers brushed against the underside of the keyboard, feeling for any anomaly. And there it was, a faint seam almost perfectly disguised. With a gentle push, a small panel clicked inward, revealing a shallow recess. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, was a single tarnished silver key and a small leather-bound notebook, much smaller than Robert's diary. This wasn't the diary Michael had found. This was different. She picked up the notebook. Its cover was blank, but inside, the pages were filled with Robert's familiar, precise handwriting, but in a code far more complex than the diary entries she'd been deciphering. It was a dense, almost mathematical cipher, interspersed with diagrams of what looked like circuit boards and schematics. This wasn't a personal journal. It was a technical manual. And then her eyes caught something else in the recess. A faint, almost imperceptible glow emanated from a tiny recessed button. Curiosity overpowering caution, she pressed it. With a soft whirring sound, A section of the wall behind the piano slid silently inward, revealing a second, smaller chamber. This space was starker, colder, dominated by a single heavy steel table. On the table sat a collection of what looked like ancient hard drives, their casings robust and industrial, alongside a series of magnetic tapes. And among them, surprisingly, was a modern, ruggedized laptop, its screen dark. This was not just a hiding place. It was a secure vault within a vault. Her gaze then fell upon a sealed, plain envelope, placed prominently on top of the laptop. Her name, Emily, was written on it in Robert's hand. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single folded letter, heavy parchment, covered in Robert's elegant script. She unfolded it, her eyes scanning the words, her breath catching in her throat. "Emily," it began. "If you are reading this, it means you have followed the breadcrumbs, understood the warnings, and found your way into the heart of my life's true work, and perhaps my greatest failure. I apologize for the labyrinthine path, but the stakes were and remain too high for a simpler approach. The diary you found, the one you've been painstakingly deciphering, was a decoy, a necessary misdirection. Its purpose was twofold: to guide a mind perceptive enough to see past the surface, and to act as a public record of a fabricated life, should my true work ever be exposed. The Project Nightingale entries within it were, in part, true. I was indeed listening, but not just for whispers of the enemy. I was listening for a specific frequency, a specific anomaly. What you see before you in this room, Emily, is the culmination of that listening. These data drives and tapes contain the complete, unadulterated intelligence gathered over decades, detailing Project Chimera. Chimera was not a Soviet initiative, as many believed, nor even solely an American one. It was a collaborative endeavor, initiated in the shadows by rogue elements from both sides during the Cold War, individuals driven by a dangerous ideology that transcended national loyalties. They believed that true global stability could only be achieved through absolute control, enforced by a unique form of digital weaponization. The Nightingale was my code name, not just for listening but for a counter-operation. My mission was to track, understand, and ultimately neutralize Chimera. It was a system designed to exploit global digital infrastructure, a precursor to what you would now call a sophisticated cyber weapon, capable of manipulating and collapsing financial markets, power grids, and communication networks across the globe, all under the guise of an unforeseeable accident or a natural disaster. Its activation would cripple economies, breed chaos, and allow these shadowy figures to rise from the ashes as saviors, reshaping the world in their image. I spent my life dismantling it piece by piece, mapping its vulnerabilities, and creating a fail-safe. The technical notebook you found contains the key to understanding its architecture and, crucially, the protocols for its complete deactivation. The data drives contain the proof of its existence, the identities of its architects and financiers, and the operational logs of its testing phases. This laptop, though modern, is specifically configured with the necessary encryption keys and software to access and process this archaic data. My one regret, Emily, is that I never fully succeeded in purging Chimera. I came close. I believed I had rendered it inert, a ghost in the machine. But recent events, subtle shifts in global digital traffic, and a pattern of unusual financial anomalies led me to believe that a remnant, a dormant core, might still exist. A single critical component I missed, or perhaps a new generation of architects finally ready to activate their inheritance. This is where you come in. You possess the unique blend of intellect, courage, and perhaps most importantly, a certain moral clarity that I recognized in your grandmother and now see in you. You are not bound by the old loyalties, the old grudges. You are the fresh eyes, the uncompromised mind needed for this final critical step. My last mission, Emily, is now yours. You must use this information, these keys, to find the dormant core of Chimera. You must expose its architects and prevent its activation. The world believes the Cold War ended with the fall of the wall, but the shadows it cast, the dangerous ideas it spawned, continue to threaten us. Chimera is the ultimate proof of that lingering darkness. Be wary, Emily. The people behind Chimera are still powerful, still influential. They will stop at nothing to protect their secret. They will know you are coming. They have probably been watching you since the moment you started looking for me. Trust no one outside of those you know to be absolutely beyond reproach. My old contacts are either dead, retired, or compromised. You are on your own, but you are not without tools. The small silver key unlocks the laptop, The password is the first line of the Chopin Nocturne currently playing. The rest, my dear Emily, is in your hands. May God grant you strength and wisdom. With utmost hope and deepest apologies for the burden I leave you with, Robert. Emily reread the letter, her mind reeling. The diary was a decoy. Project Nightingale was a counter-operation. Chimera. Digital weaponization on a global scale. Rogue elements. A dormant core. A new generation. And the chilling realization. They will know you are coming. They have probably been watching you since the moment you started looking for me. She clutched the letter, her eyes darting around the hidden room. The old equipment, the silent laptop, the magnetic tapes. They weren't just historical artifacts. They were live instruments in an ongoing deadly game. Robert hadn't just been a spy. He had been a guardian, a silent sentinel against a threat far greater than any conventional enemy. And now that mantle had fallen to her. Her gaze fixated on the laptop, then on the silver key in her hand. The first line of the Chopin Nocturne. She knew the piece. She could almost hear Robert's voice, calm and resolute, guiding her. A faint click, almost imperceptible, echoed from somewhere above her. A shift in the air pressure. A subtle whisper that wasn't the piano. It was too quiet, too deliberate to be the old house settling. It was the sound of something, or someone moving outside this hidden chamber. The heavy door, her only entrance and exit, was still shut. But the sound suggested a presence, a knowing. Her heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. She wasn't alone. Robert's final warning reverberated in her mind. They knew. They were here. The faint scraping grew louder, a deliberate metallic drag against the concrete floor just beyond the heavy door. It wasn't an attempt to breach, not yet. It was something being moved into place. A silent, terrifying declaration. Emily pressed herself against the cold steel of the wall, the diary clutched tight in her hands, its worn leather a strange comfort against her clammy skin. Her breath hitched in her throat, each inhale a shallow, ragged gasp. Then a low hum started, a mechanical thrum that vibrated through the floor and up into her bones. It sounded like heavy machinery, perhaps a drill, or something far more sophisticated designed for breaching fortified structures. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, a cold wave washing over her, but the sheer terror also sharpened her senses. She scanned the small room, desperately searching for anything, any hidden panel, any forgotten tool, any way to fight back or escape. Nothing. The room was bare, functional, a tomb. A voice, calm and measured, suddenly cut through the hum, amplified and distorted, echoing slightly through the thick door. It was a man's voice, deep and resonant, with a subtle, almost imperceptible electronic filter that made it impossible to pinpoint its exact origin or inflection. It was an American voice, devoid of any regional tell. "Emily, we know you're in there." The words were a hammer blow. Her name, spoken by an unseen entity, confirming her worst fears. They weren't just outside, they knew her. They knew why she was here. "Don't bother looking for an exit," the voice continued, smooth as polished stone. "There isn't one that we haven't accounted for. This facility was built to hold secrets, and those who sought to uncover them." A chilling pause. "Or those who possessed them." Emily squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, trying to steady her racing heart. Robert's words, his frantic warnings, now made terrifying sense. They knew everything. This wasn't just about a hidden diary, it was about an entire living conspiracy. "Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be," the voice suggested, almost kindly. Robert made that mistake. He believed he could outrun us. He believed he could expose us. A tragic miscalculation. A fresh wave of grief mingled with fury surged through Emily. Robert. They had killed him. And now they were here for her. For the diary that had cost him his life. "You have something that belongs to us, Emily," the voice continued, its tone hardening slightly. "The journal. Or, as it was known to its original author, Project Chimera. Contingency Protocols." Project Chimera. The name sent a shiver down her spine. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel or a Cold War nightmare. Contingency Protocols. It implied a plan, a failsafe, something that could be activated. "You don't understand what you're holding," the voice stated, a hint of genuine concern, or perhaps just condescension, entering its measured cadence. "That journal isn't just a relic of the past. It's not merely a historical record of a bygone era. It's a living document. A blueprint. The activation codes for an operation that has been decades in the making. Emily felt a cold dread spread through her. Decades in the making. This wasn't just about covering up old secrets. This was about something current, something imminent. The man who compiled that journal, the voice went on, a note of almost reverence entering its tone, was a visionary. He foresaw a future where global powers would shift, where traditional alliances would crumble, and new threats would emerge. He understood that true influence lay not in overt control, but in subtle manipulation, in the quiet redirection of events. Emily's mind raced, connecting the dots. The diary wasn't just a spy's personal musings, it was a detailed plan, a strategic guide for a clandestine organization. The Cold War spy wasn't just an agent, he was the architect of this enduring shadow power. He built a network meticulously, patiently, the voice explained as if lecturing a student. A network designed to survive any political upheaval, any regime change. A network of individuals positioned at every critical juncture. Finance, technology, media, government. People who, often unknowingly, served a greater purpose. His purpose. Our purpose. The sheer scale of it was staggering. An organization operating in the shadows for decades, influencing global events, and the diary was its master plan. Robert stumbled upon the periphery of this network, the voice explained, a note of irritation now. He saw pieces, enough to be dangerous but not enough to comprehend the full scope. He believed he was uncovering a past scandal. He was utterly mistaken. He was uncovering the foundation of tomorrow. This was the truth Robert had died for. Not just a Cold War secret, but a contemporary threat, a shadow government shaping the future. Emily looked down at the diary in her hands, its weight suddenly immense, its pages crackling with untold power. This wasn't just a diary. It was the key to understanding, and perhaps even stopping this organization. Now, Emily, you possess that key, the voice said, its tone turning persuasive, almost seductive, and with it a choice. You can continue Robert's futile crusade, and meet the same unfortunate end. Or, you can understand that some forces are simply too vast to be resisted, too ingrained to be uprooted. The humming outside grew louder, more insistent, accompanied by a rhythmic thudding. They were beginning to work on the door. Time was running out. We offer you a chance, Emily, the voice continued, its urgency now mirroring the pounding outside. Hand over the journal. Walk away. We can arrange for you to disappear, to start fresh, with resources beyond your imagination. No questions asked. No repercussions. Just peace. It was a tempting offer, a phantom limb of hope in the face of certain doom. But Emily knew it was a lie. They wouldn't let her walk away, not with the knowledge she now possessed, not after what she'd seen and heard. She was a loose end, a witness. Or, the voice deepened, losing its persuasive edge. We can take it from you. And believe me, Emily, the methods we employ to extract information from uncooperative individuals are far less pleasant than a comfortable retirement. The threat hung heavy in the air, cold and undeniable. Emily felt a surge of defiant anger. Robert hadn't given up, and neither would she. She wasn't a spy, she wasn't trained for this, but she had a moral compass that screamed against complicity. She couldn't let them have it. Not this blueprint for global manipulation. The journal details Operation Chimera, the voice reiterated, as if to underscore the importance. A series of strategically timed events designed to reshape the geopolitical landscape in the coming months. Without those contingency protocols, without the precise sequencing and activation codes, the entire operation is vulnerable. It could unravel. And that, Emily, we cannot allow. Months. Not years, not decades, but months. The operation was active, imminent. The diary contained the specific details, the activation codes, the precise triggers or instructions for this vast, insidious plan. Emily's eyes darted around the room again. There had to be something. A vent, a loose panel, anything. Her gaze fell on the small, almost imperceptible seam where the floor met the wall in one corner. It was thicker than the others, a slightly darker line in the polished concrete. A conduit? A hidden access point for maintenance? Or something more? The thudding against the heavy door intensified, the metal groaning under the assault. It wouldn't hold forever. She had minutes, maybe seconds. This is your last chance, Emily, the voice warned, its calm facade beginning to crack, revealing an underlying impatience. We are coming in. Make your decision." Emily ignored the voice, her fingers tracing the faint seam in the floor. Her heart hammered not just from fear, but from a desperate, burgeoning hope. Robert had been resourceful. He had anticipated betrayal. He had planned for contingencies. This bunker wasn't just a hiding place. It was a secure repository. And a repository, by its very nature, often had a way for its contents to be accessed or distributed. She knelt, pressing her ear to the floor, trying to discern if the seam was truly a panel. The vibrations from the drilling outside were overwhelming, but she thought she felt a faint give, a subtle difference in the texture. Her fingers scrabbled, searching for a latch, a button, anything. Her nails scraped against the rough concrete. The voice outside roared, now devoid of its previous calm. "Breach it! Now!" A high-pitched whine began, piercing through the thudding, the sound of heavy-duty cutting equipment engaging the blast door. The metal shrieked in protest. Emily knew this was it. They were coming through. She frantically ran her hands along the seam, her fingers brushing against something small, cold, and metallic. A tiny, almost flesh button, hidden beneath a layer of dust and grime. She pressed it instinctively. With a soft click, a small section of the floor, about a foot square, recessed slightly and then slid inwards, revealing a dark, narrow cavity. Inside, nestled amongst some old wiring and what looked like a small, antique radio receiver, was a satellite phone. A modern device, seemingly out of place in this Cold War bunker, but perfectly preserved. Robert. He hadn't just hidden the diary here. He had left her a way out, a way to send the information, a way to fight back. The blast door shrieked again, a deafening tear of metal, and a thin crack of light appeared at its edge. They were almost through. Emily snatched up the satellite phone, her eyes wide with a desperate resolve. She didn't know who to call, who to trust, but she knew she had to try. The fate of Operation Chimera, and perhaps much more, now rested in her hands. The journal was more than just pages. It was a ticking time bomb, and she was holding the detonator. She was holding the detonator. The weight of the journal in her hands felt heavier than any weapon. She didn't know who to call, who to trust, but she knew she had to try. The fate of Operation Chimera, and perhaps much more, now rested in her hands. The journal was more than just pages. It was a ticking time bomb, and she was holding the detonator. Jessica's mind raced, a whirlwind of names and faces, each one tainted with suspicion. The agency, her home for years, now felt like a viper's nest. She couldn't walk into her office and hand this over. Not yet. Not until she knew for certain. She scanned Daniel's last entry again, the words swirling, refusing to yield a deeper meaning. The old oak's shadow where truth finds its light. It sounded like poetry, like a riddle, but Daniel was precise. He didn't write poetry. She remembered his meticulous habits, his tendency to hide things in plain sight. He had a specific brand of ink he always used, a subtle shade of blue-black. What if it wasn't the words but the way they were written? She pulled out her phone, shining its flashlight across the page. Nothing. Then she thought of something else. Daniel, a true Cold War relic, often spoke of the old ways the physical tells. She held the page up to the light, not the flashlight but a natural light source, the window. Slowly, subtly, a faint watermark shimmered into view, almost imperceptible against the aged paper. It wasn't a standard watermark. It was a series of tiny, almost invisible pinpricks forming a pattern. It was Morse code. Her fingers trembled as she translated the dots and dashes.
Ezzo Lima November Alpha Fibe 720000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000
Daniel had once mentioned years ago, when he was reminiscing about his first field assignments. It was a frequency used by a highly secure, now mostly decommissioned shortwave radio network, a network almost impossible to trace. And then below it, just as faint, another series of pinpricks. A date and a time. Tonight. Midnight. This wasn't a call. It was an instruction. A dead drop. There was only one person she knew who still had access to such a relic, and who Daniel would trust implicitly, Robert Maxwell. Robert, Daniel's former handler, now long retired, a legend in the agency's clandestine history. He was a man of integrity, fiercely loyal, and completely outside the current chain of command. If anyone could help her, it was Robert. Jessica knew she was entering a dangerous game. She had to move carefully and visibly. She ditched her car, taking a series of public buses and then walking for miles, changing her appearance subtly with a hat and a different jacket she'd stashed in her emergency bag. She felt the chill of the night air, but it was nothing compared to the icy dread in her stomach. She arrived at the designated location, a forgotten corner of an old public park, dominated by a massive ancient oak tree. The old oak's shadow. It was exactly midnight. The park was deserted, the only sounds the rustling leaves and the distant hum of the city. Her heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. She scanned the area, every shadow a potential threat, every rustle of leaves a possible footstep. Suddenly a car pulled up, silent as a ghost. It wasn't Robert Maxwell's beat-up sedan. This was a sleek, black agency vehicle, the kind driven by high-level personnel. Her blood ran cold. The driver's side window rolled down, revealing a familiar face. David Hayes. Deputy Director David Hayes. "Jessica," he said, his voice calm, almost sympathetic. "I was hoping you'd come here." Daniel was a sentimental man. A wave of nausea hit her. Hayes, all along. The man who had been so helpful, so understanding, so eager to assist her investigation. He was Kay. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, her hand instinctively going to her pocket where she'd tucked the journal, now her only weapon. Hayes chuckled softly, a dry, humorless sound. Daniel was brilliant but predictable. He always had a contingency. I knew he had a fail-safe, a way to expose me if things went south. I just didn't know what form it would take, or where he'd hide it. But I knew the journal was key. And when you started asking questions, when Michael started digging, it confirmed my suspicions. I've been watching you, Jessica, very closely. He got out of the car, his movements deliberate, unhurried. Another figure emerged from the passenger side, a burly, nondescript man she vaguely recognized from agency security. An operative. "Operation Chimera," Jessica stated, her voice gaining strength. "What is it, Hayes? What have you done?" Hayes stopped a few feet from her, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Operation Chimera is not what I've done, Jessica. It's what I'm going to do. It's the reset button. For years I've watched this agency, this government, rot from the inside out. Corruption, incompetence, short-sightedness. We've become a bloated, self-serving machine, more concerned with internal politics than national security." Daniel saw it too for a time. He just lacked the courage to truly act. "You're talking about treason," Jessica spat, her grip tightening on the journal. "I'm talking about salvation," Hayes countered, his eyes gleaming with a disturbing conviction. Chimera is a network of sleeper agents, cultivated for decades, embedded not just in foreign governments, but within our own critical infrastructure. Power grids, communication networks, financial systems. They're not just spies, Jessica. They're saboteurs. And when they activate, when the chaos begins, the system will collapse. And from the ashes, a new order will rise. An order I will ensure is pure, efficient, and truly serves the nation. He took another step closer. Daniel tried to stop me. He found my early communications, the initial activation protocols. He was close to exposing me. I couldn't allow that. He had to be silenced. A regrettable necessity. Jessica's mind raced. He had killed Daniel. He was about to activate a network that would cripple the entire country. And she was standing alone with a journal against a deputy director and a trained operative. "Give me the journal, Jessica," Hayes said, extending his hand. "Let's end this quietly. You're a good agent. You could be part of the new order. You could help me rebuild." "Never," she snarled, her eyes darting around, searching for an escape route, a distraction. The park was vast, but the open spaces offered little cover. "Then you leave me no choice," Hayes sighed, his tone still disturbingly calm. He nodded to the operative. The operative lunged. Jessica reacted on instinct, years of training kicking in. She sidestepped, using the operative's momentum against him, shoving him towards Hayes. It bought her a precious second. She didn't run towards the street, where Hayes's car was waiting. She ran deeper into the park, towards the denser thicket of trees, hoping the darkness and uneven terrain would give her an advantage. The operative recovered quickly, a blur of motion behind her. Hayes, surprisingly agile for his age, was right behind him, shouting orders. "Don't let her transmit anything. Get the journal." Jessica wove through the trees, branches whipping at her face. She knew she couldn't outrun them forever. She needed a plan. She needed to get the information out. The frequency. The dead drop. Robert Maxwell. She remembered Daniel's final, cryptic message in the journal. The old oak shadow where truth finds its light. It wasn't just a location for her to find the journal. It was also a location for him to transmit from, a place where the old shortwave network had a surprisingly strong signal due to a unique topographical anomaly. Daniel had planned for this. He had planned for everything. She scrambled up the trunk of the massive oak, gripping the rough bark, adrenaline pumping through her veins. The operative was right below her, cursing, trying to pull her down. Hayes was directing him, eyes narrowed. "She's going for the signal," Hayes yelled. "Stop her." Jessica reached the first sturdy branch, pulling herself up. She fumbled in her pocket, pulling out her phone. It was insane, but it was her only chance. She had no shortwave radio, but she did have a recorder. And she had the frequency. She could record a message, a desperate plea, a transmission of the numbers, and hope that Robert Maxwell, out there tonight listening at midnight, would pick up a faint, anomalous signal. The operative was climbing after her, a deadly spider on her heels. Jessica knew she had seconds. She opened the voice recorder app, held the phone close to her mouth, and in a rapid-fire whisper she spoke. "Robert, it's Jessica. Hayes is K. Operation Chimera is real. Sleeper agents. Critical infrastructure. Activation codes are in Daniel's journal."
Te frequenzie Lima November Alpha Fibes eventuo 00 one 000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000
Please. You're the only one I trust. Please, Robert. Please." The journal. As she spoke the last word, the operative's hand clamped around her ankle, yanking hard. She lost her grip, the phone flying from her hand. It arced through the air, landing with a sickening crunch on the ground below. She barely registered the pain as she tumbled, hitting branches, before landing hard at the base of the tree. Hayes was there instantly, grabbing the journal from her grasp. He looked at her, triumph in his eyes. "Too late, Jessica. Too late." He then saw her phone lying shattered on the ground. He kicked it, crushing it further. Nothing gets out. But as he spoke, a faint, almost imperceptible static crackled through the night air. It was barely audible, a ghost of a sound, but it was there. And it wasn't coming from Jessica's broken phone. It was coming from somewhere unseen, carried on the wind. Robert Maxwell. He had been listening. He had picked up the anomalous signal. A flicker of doubt crossed Hayes's face. He looked around, his calm demeanor finally cracking. What was that? Jessica, bruised and aching, managed a weak smile. "You underestimate Daniel, Hayes. And you underestimate me. The truth always finds its light." The next few hours were a blur of flashing lights, sirens, and the sudden chaotic arrival of a heavily armed tactical team. Robert Maxwell, having received Jessica's garbled, desperate message and knowing Daniel's elaborate contingency plans, had immediately contacted his own trusted, deeply vetted contacts within the government, bypassing Hayes's corrupted network entirely. He had provided enough fragmented information to trigger a red alert, and the rapid response team had been deployed to the park, just in time. Hayes and his operative were apprehended, their faces a mixture of fury and disbelief. The journal, now in secure hands, confirmed every terrifying detail of Operation Chimera. The network was real. The activation protocols were days, even hours away. The information Jessica had risked everything to send, combined with the detailed entries in Daniel's journal, provided the intelligence community with just enough time to act. Operation Chimera was largely neutralized, its deep cover agents identified and apprehended across the country before they could inflict widespread damage. But it wasn't without cost. A few initial cells, already primed, managed to cause isolated disruptions, a localized power outage in a major city, a brief but terrifying cyber attack on a financial institution, a momentary communications blackout in a vital government sector. These incidents, though quickly contained, served as chilling proof of how close the nation had come to a catastrophic collapse. Jessica was hailed as a hero, but the victory felt hollow. Daniel was gone, a casualty of a hidden war. Michael, who had followed her frantic, cryptic messages to the park, found her battered but alive. He stayed by her side, a silent, comforting presence. The agency, now in damage control, began the painstaking process of rooting out Hayes's remaining sympathizers and rebuilding trust. The lost diary of a Cold War spy had not just exposed a mole, it had unveiled a sophisticated, decades-long plot to dismantle the very fabric of the nation. It was a stark reminder that the shadows of the Cold War still stretched long, and the enemies within were often the most dangerous. Jessica, forever changed, knew that the fight for truth and security was never truly over. The world was a complex web of loyalty and betrayal, and sometimes the only light in the darkness came from the faded ink of a forgotten journal, held by someone brave enough to read its final, most dangerous secrets.